Hello and welcome to Music Theory for Dancers. Thank you for purchasing this lesson. This is part of a small series I'll be doing with the aim to spread some basic and at times not so basic music theory knowledge I've gained from being a musician, specifically a drummer, for many years. And it's knowledge that I think is super crucial for dancers to know. And a lot of it is just based around rhythm, so we won't be getting into harmony or anything too crazy, just some rhythmic knowledge that I think is super important for everyone to have as a solid base. So let's get started. Okay, so what is rhythm? Rhythm is just the alternation of strong and weak accents in the flow of music or sound. Like speech has a rhythm, not just music and beats and things that we listen to. So, music is measured in bars, or you'll hear Americans call it measures. And a bar is simply one unit or cycle of beats. And we can tell how long that cycle or bar is going to be by looking at the time signature. The time signature tells us how many beats are in each measure and what kind of value the beat has. For example, 4/4, which is a very common time signature, tells us that there are 4 quarter beats per bar. 1, 2, 3, 4. Next bar, 1, 2, 3, 4. Easy. This is slightly different from what dancers are used to because we will usually count in 8, but musicians always count in 4. One basic concept that we are all pretty familiar with is half time, single time or common time, and double time. So if our tempo is counting out like this, 2, 3, 4, common time, boom, 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 nice and easy. Half time, boom, boom, back to common time, boom. And as we know, double time would be boom, 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 boom. Yeah? And we often come across this in warm-ups or different isolation exercises where we'll be going 1, 2, 3, 4 to common time, to double time. Yeah? Super easy concept, but just good to know how to define it all. So let's get on to some different note values. I just mentioned that 4/4 tells us 4 quarter beats per bar. So we know that quarter beats are what we are used to hearing. 1, 2, 3, 4. That tells us that's 4 quarter beats. Now we can also have a half beat, which quite obviously is twice as long as a quarter beat. So if our bar is this, half beat would go ba, ba. You'd fit 2 of them in the bar. That's why it's a half beat. Quarter beat, as we know, 1, 2, 3, 4. We also have eighth notes. Eighth note is what we would typically count as 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You fit 8 of them in a measure or a bar. Beyond that, we divide again, halving each value to get 16th notes, which we would typically hear as 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. You can fit 16 of them in a bar. Yeah? The British names for those note values are minim, which is the half beat, 1, 2, 2, 2. It's called a minim. The single or quarter note value is a crotchet, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we have quavers, which are our and counts, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And lastly, semiquavers, which are our 1E ander, or 16th notes, as Americans would call them. Okay, so I've included some pictures of different note values. Get familiar with those and how they look. It should be quite self-explanatory, and I've put the 1E ander in brackets below the crotchets because it's a very useful tip just to always count in 16th notes. So always be dividing to 16th notes in your head when you're listening to music anyway. Even if your beat is boom, you should count boom. That way it's so much easier to feel and hear where the different accents that create the rhythm fall into when you're dividing by a smaller number. If I was just counting in crotchets, doom, and I heard do, this third count, I was missing the and count because I should have been dividing a bit smaller, and I would have found it fits in right between those intervals easily. Another good way to count is to always just have the crotchet counts strong in your head. And then if I say we're going to count a whole bar of and counts, ka, 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 ka. You're treating each of those as its own unit, as you'll see written. So, when we want to combine different note values, for example, in a bar of 4 we can have 1 crotchet, 2 quavers, 4 semiquavers, 2 quavers, which will sound like this. Ba, 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 ba. Okay? The easiest way is to just always have the strong counts in your head and treat each count as its own unit and work it out that way. So, at this point I'm going to give you a couple to try. So after I've said them, please pause the video, give them a go, and then resume the video to find the answers. So I'll give you 3. Let's have 3. First one, I'll say they're all just going to be 1 bar long. Let the first one be a minim, followed by a crotchet, followed by 2 quavers. Or you'd call it a half note, followed by a quarter note, followed by 2 eighth notes. Second one, we're going to have 2 eighth notes, 4 16th notes, 2 eighth notes, 4 16th notes. Nice and easy. And the last one, we're going to go 1 crotchet, 2 quavers, another 2 quavers, and 4 16th notes to finish. Okay, now pause the video, and afterwards I will have those 3 played out for you. So the first one I said was a half note, followed by a quarter note, followed by 2 eighth notes, which sounds like this. Ba, 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 ba. Again, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, ka, ka, ka. Okay, next one. I said 2 eighth notes, 4 16th notes, 2 eighth notes, 4 16th notes. Super easy. 2, 3, 4. Ba, 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 ba. Yeah, again, 2, 3, 4. Ba, 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 ba. And the last one was 1 quarter note or a crotchet, followed by 2 eighth notes, quavers, followed by another 2 eighth notes, finishing with 4 16th notes, which sounds like this. 2, 3, 4. Ba, 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 ba. Again, 2, 3, 4. Ba, 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 ba. Cool. I hope that was self-explanatory. That's just some super basic combinations of those different note values. I'm going to give you a trickier one, which I want you to give a go. I haven't told you how it'll sound yet, but just give it a go from what you've learned so far. It's going to go the same as the first one. It's 2 bars long. The first bar is going to be the same as the first exercise. So it's going to be a minim, followed by a crotchet, followed by 2 quavers. We know how that's going to sound already. And the second bar is going to be 2 16th notes connected to 1 8th note, followed by 2 8th notes, finishing with a crotchet and another crotchet. Now each of those units equates to 1 beat of the bar. The last 2 are literally just 3, 4. The first 2 units are different though. So the first count, 1. Until we get to 2, that whole first 1 count is going to consist of 2 semiquavers connected to a quaver. So try to figure out what that might sound like. Pause the video and then I will explain how this rhythm will go. The whole 2 bars. First bar is going to be minim, crotchet, 2 quavers. Second bar, 2 semiquavers connected to a quaver. 2 quavers on their own, crotchet, crotchet. So pause the video and then we'll get to it. That's going to sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ba, 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 ba. So that tricky part in the middle was the 2 semiquavers connected to the quaver, which sounds like ba, ba, ba. Ba, ba, ba. Ba, ba, ba. Okay? It's imagining that we have the 4 semiquavers as they are, but we're just taking the last one away, and because we're taking it away, this third one is no longer a semiquaver, it's a quaver, because it lasts for 2 semiquavers, right? Da, 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 hold. Instead of putting a rest or a silence in there, I'm just leaving it as 2 semiquavers connected to a quaver. Ba, ba, ba. Ba, 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 ba. Nice and easy. Okay, so that's some basic note values. I've included a table so that you guys can visually understand that and hopefully it will make more sense. But I wanted to explain a couple more super basic concepts to you in this first beginner lesson. So, one thing I wanted to say was about dotted note values. Now a dotted note value, the dot, what it actually means is it means you're adding half of the value of the note that's dotted. So if I have a minim which lasts for 2 beats, that's how long a minim lasts. If I've got a dotted minim, it's going to last for that plus half of the value, and half of 2 is 1. So the total value is going to be 3 beats. So a dotted minim will last for 3 of the 4 beats of my bar. A dotted crotchet is 1.5 crotchets. Now the easiest thing to do is to think of equivalent note values. Instead of trying to think 1.5 crotchets, just work out what 1 crotchet is the equivalent to. 1 crotchet is the equivalent to 2 quavers. So if it's 1.5 crotchets, that's 3 quavers, right? Because 2 crotchets would be 4, but we're halving it, so it's just 3 quavers. So if I had a dotted crotchet, it would sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and. Right? If I were to add another beat on the end, just to show that that value had ended. 1, 2, and. Because I'm adding that extra half of the value. So instead of being 1, 2, I'd come in an extra quaver later. 1, 2, and. Cool. So if I had a dotted quaver, that would be equivalent to 3 semiquavers. Because 1 quaver is 2 semiquavers, and 1.5 quavers obviously is then 3 semiquavers. And the easiest way to do it, like I mentioned in the beginning, is to always count 1 eander, 2 eander, 3 eander, 4 eander in your head. So that when I say we have a dotted quaver connected to 1 semiquaver, and I'm just going to repeat that 4 times, it's going to sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, because that first dotted quaver is lasting for 3 semiquavers. So that whole first 3 that I'm counting, 1 E and, is how long the first one lasts. 1 E and I'm just putting another semiquaver on the end just to catch it, so it makes a repeatable pattern. Okay, a little bit tricky, but I'm going to include another example written, so hopefully that will make some sense. Cool, so I have one more exercise that I wanted to give you guys with the dotted semiquaver now, the dotted note values, and that is another 2-bar exercise. The first bar is going to consist of 2 quavers, 1 crotchet, 4 semiquavers, 1 crotchet. Again, 2 quavers, 1 crotchet, 4 semiquavers, 1 crotchet. Sorry, I'm just looking at my computer to actually know what this sequence goes like. And the second bar is going to be 1 crotchet, 2 quavers. The third unit is going to be a dotted quaver connected to a semiquaver like we just went over. And the last unit is going to be a quaver connected to 2 semiquavers. So the opposite of the tricky one that we did earlier. Again, that second bar is going to be a crotchet connected to 2 quavers, connected to a dotted quaver with a semiquaver on the end. And lastly, the fourth beat of the bar is going to be a quaver tied to 2 semiquavers. So pause the video, give that a go. If it helps, try to write it out as well. If not, then just rewind it and listen to it again and try figure that out. But it should both be 4 beats. The first bar should add up to 4, second bar should add up to 4. So pause the video and then I'll give you the answer shortly after. Okay, so I hope that wasn't too difficult. The way that should sound is the following. 2, 3, 4. Okay, so the second bar is the tricky bar, so let's go over that. It's 1 crotchet, 2 quavers, a dotted quaver connected to a semiquaver, and then quaver connected to 2 semiquavers. So that goes 1, 2, and 3, 4, and Again, in my head, I'm thinking because it just makes so much more sense to constantly be subdividing in that value in your head. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and Yeah, because the last unit is a quaver connected to 2 semiquavers. And we know that a quaver lasts the length of 2 semiquavers. So that unit is going to sound 1 E and boom, hold, ka. Yeah? Nice and easy. Cool. So there's some super basic note values for you. We went through minim, crotchets, quavers, semiquavers. Just 4 super basic values. Or you might call them half note, quarter note, eighth note, 16th note. And as you notice, each time we're just dividing by 2, halving the note value so we can squeeze more notes in the same intervals. A lot of common mistakes include people saying like the tempo is changing. The tempo isn't changing. My tempo is remaining this, but I'm just subdividing from here to here to here if I wanted to, right? I'm not changing tempo, my tempo remains the same, I'm just subdividing the smaller, faster value. Cool. Last 2 things, 2 keywords I wanted to give you are staccato and legato. Staccato means short. Legato means long or elongated. So, if we were to add these 2 principles to any of the sequences that we've learnt today, for example the last one, ba, 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 we could play that staccato, which would sound the exact same as I just said, or legato, da 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 da, which sounds terrible. But on an instrument it would sound a lot nicer, especially if you weren't singing the exact same note. Da 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 da. You know? Not a singer at all, but I'm trying to just help and educate. You get the idea. So I want you to practice making your own 2-bar sequences of using different note values that we've gone over today. And then after that, make about 3 or so of those 2-bar sequences of your own. You can write them out if it helps. I would highly recommend doing so, just to familiarize yourself with the notation. But also, once you've done that, try to play them all the way through staccato, play it all the way through legato, and then try to mix and match the dynamic choices. Yeah? And for fun, I would highly recommend trying to integrate any of these rhythms into your body. For example, just choosing a basic isolation, for example the head, shoulders being up and down, forward and back, whatever it is, chest, basic circle, and trying to use those rhythms attached to that body part. And that'll be easier to show legato and staccato as well. For example, if I'm here, da 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 da, clearly staccato. But if I wanted to try the same thing legato, da 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 da, yeah, it changes the feeling. And you can also change halfway through, da 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 da. Yeah, it's just playing with those super basic principles, but in a creative and playful way. So I hope this lesson has been somewhat useful. It is my first time trying to deliver information like this, so I'm sorry if it was a bit choppy. Please join me for the next Music Theory for Dancers session, where I'll be going over triplet rhythms, shuffled rhythms, and accents as well, shifting accents, which is much more applicable to dance, footwork, isolations, etc. But all this stuff today was just like a beginner's crash course with some super basic theory knowledge, which I hope you were able to digest, enjoy, and can go away and play with those few tasks that I've given you. Please, if you've taken this class, feel free to send me the examples of your 2-bar rhythms that you've made. Also, feel free to show me how you've tried to incorporate that into your dance or put those rhythms on top of your body in different ways, please using staccato and legato. That would be really interesting. But yeah, that wraps it up. Thank you guys so much for taking this class, and I hope to see you next time. Peace.